Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building brands, businesses, and a career you love with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Welcome to the show. It really is so great to have you here, ready to hear an epic business building story that has inspired me so much since meeting these incredible humans. This is the story of Ami and Sian, co-founders of Pleasant State, who, if you haven't heard of yet, you definitely should get to know. Amy's vision for the brand is incredible, and the way in which she's gone for it, attracting the right people and opportunities to help her get there, is straight up motivational, as is Sian's passion and ability to demonstrate exactly how brand marketing should be done, from the tone in written communications and brand emails, through to the socials and every single aspect of how Pleasant State connects with their audience. I mean, clearly I am frothing on this episode because it really feels like a masterclass from two very likable humans. We talk about being a bootstrapped and crowd-funded business, getting real about how the financing works and why tight cash flow management is pivotal, the value of the right business partners and how to find them, the importance of market research for product development, how to build a community using the tools that are already at your fingertips, an aspect of business that simply cannot be overlooked, and both the value and balance between showing up as a face of your brand while keeping your own sense of identity. If you're anything like me, business builder, you'll be taking notes throughout this episode because, as always, my guests today are so generous with their story, which uplifts and motivates us all in this business gig. If you love the chat, make sure to let me know with a review or a DM. You know I love those. Let's get into it. Please enjoy the chat. I'm chatting today with Ami Bateman and Sian Murray, co-founders of Pleasant State, a female-owned Australian startup that's looking to change the game by focusing on a bigger purpose, not just profit. Here's a not-so-fun fact for you. Everyday cleaning products are packaged in single-use plastic and filled with toxic chemicals that are known carcinogens, allergens, and sensitizers, and are made of around 97% water. That's why Pleasant State exists. They've developed Australia's first Just Add Water cleaning bars that, when dissolved, make a multi-purpose bathroom and class spray cleaner and hand and dish soap. Think Barocca, but for cleaning. Developed and manufactured in Australia, tried and tested against the best household brands, Pleasant State's cleaning bars are super effective, no nasties and no BS, with 1% of sales from every product sold donated to Take 3 for the Sea. Today, Pleasant State is in close to 20,000 customer homes across Australia and New Zealand. They've stopped over 123,000 plastic bottles from being produced and have donated over 43,000 to aligned charities. Their customers rate their products 4.9 out of 5 stars with a net promoter score of 78. I mean, absolutely killing it. I am not done though. Pleasant State is the only home care brand to have its entire range of products independently verified as safe, non-toxic, ethical, responsible, and sustainable by the Clean and Conscious Awards in 21 and 22. They were recognised as winners of the 2022 Trans-Tasman Innovation and Growth Awards, which were presented by Prime Minister Albanese and Prime Minister Ardern, no less, love her, and more recently were announced as state finalists in the 2023 Telstra Best of Business Awards in 3 categories. With ambitions to make waves, not ripples, when it comes to social and environmental impacts, I cannot wait to hear your story of building Pleasant State. Ami and Sian, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kim.
I could listen to that every morning. That was such a great intro. Thank you. A good little pump up.
Maybe I should record that as a meditation for you or something. Just something you can listen to every single morning as your kind of daily affirmation. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a good idea. You need that in the morning, that's for sure. But yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. Let's start with one that just kind of gets us to get to know you. How would each of you describe the other? And maybe we'll start with you, Sian.
Amy is incredible at everything she does. I often call her an absolute powerhouse when people are asking about Amy. She's chief problem solver at Pleasant State. So any problem that comes our way, Amy almost like is fueled by them. She loves them. Super driven, super passionate about the ethics in our business as well, but an amazing person to work with and someone that I have learnt so much from in this few years. When you start business with someone, we used to joke it was like you're marrying someone that you've never met before. It's like an arranged marriage in a way, but we have learnt so much about each other and I'm constantly inspired by her. So yeah, she's an incredible woman in business.
Oh, well, that's just amazing. I'm feeling the feels. I love that. Amy, how would you describe Sian?
That was very sweet. Thank you so much, Sian. Probably need a tissue. Sian is also incredible. Like, I'm so lucky to have her as my business partner. I'd say for probably a few years, she felt a little bit more like my little sister. But now I'd say we're definitely equals. And so I'm really proud by how resilient and determined Sian is and how committed she is to Pleasant State growth and also her own personal growth. But the traits that really attracted me to Sian is really her optimism and her hope and her playfulness and how much fun she is and how kind she is. And they're all really traits that I wanted in a Pleasant State brand. And I just love the fact that she brings that to the Pleasant State team and to my life on a daily basis. Thanks, Sian.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I feel like, should we just end this here and just like have a hug or something?
Can you add that to the affirmation recording that I'll have every morning?
Absolutely. I mean, just absolute business partnership goals. Amy, let's hang out with you for a minute. So before Pleasant State was real, was out there in the world, who were you?
I would say I was someone who worked in big business. I have an MBA, Bachelor of Commerce. I really thrived in those environments where I was solving really complex problems, working with some of Australia's biggest organisations. I'd say probably I identified too much with my career. And so I was slowly starting a journey of trying to have a bit more of a life and trying to work out what my purpose was. So even though I was really effective in those environments, I guess I wasn't really living my purpose. And I had a lot of questions about the ethics of how business was done. Always extremely entrepreneurial and demonstrated that in my big business career, but knew I wanted to take that and build something really purposeful and impactful in the future. Outside of work, I'm a volunteer surf lifesaver. I live on the Sunshine Coast, a really beautiful partner who's super supportive of myself and Pleasant State and actually works in our business as our chemist now 1 day a week. I have this, beach surf kind of side of myself in addition to my work identity.
Oh, amazing. I mean, we chatted a little bit about the gorgeous part of the world that is the Sunshine Coast before we hit record, and I just think envious of that lifestyle that can potentially come along with business. But let's not romanticize that, because I'm sure you are so busy that you're probably just looking it out the window for most days. But Sian, tell me about you. Who were you before Pleasant State came into your world?
But I think fact to me now, I was young. I was very young and I was a bit lost, I suppose. I am originally from Melbourne. I studied journalism and PR at university, and I've always had this passion for communications and writing and just getting in front of a camera and mucking around, basically. I think I'm not afraid to jump in front of a camera at all, but I was just always trying to find my next thing, I suppose. I started a magazine straight out of uni in Melbourne, which was an amazing experience, but that led me then to a role at a digital marketing agency. And I did that for a number of years, and that really taught me about how to use my skills in communication, but it also taught me that I wanted to be so much more creative than I could be in that space. And also just Melbourne life. I love the outdoors. I love being active. I had always wanted to get into surfing. And so when I met my partner, we very quickly started planning this road trip around Australia. I just kind of wanted to leave it all behind, start fresh. So we set out on this road trip that was meant to be a 2-year road trip. We got to Noosa. And then I think when Amy and I met, I'd been in Noosa for about 6 months, maybe a little bit more. And I'd been doing some kind of odd jobs here and there, but overall I was a bit lost. I knew I wanted to do something. I knew that I was really passionate about the environment. I had all these communication skills that I wanted to do, but lots of clients that wouldn't let me do what I wanted to do. So when Pleasant State just kind of fell into my lap, it was where I wanted, what I wanted and what I needed at that time. But I definitely was at a different place to I am now. I was as young. I don't think I had the confidence back then that I do now. And so it's been a really huge growth experience. You know, you go like from 27 to 30 while starting a business. I'm a different person now. So I was young, excited, had a lot of ideas. Now I'm older and wiser, I feel.
Wow, starting a business right smack in the middle of your Saturn return period for those astrological nerds. It sounds like a real wild ride. So tell me a little bit, both of you guys, you know, how did this happen? How did the seed of this idea come about? Where did you get started?
Going back to late 2019, I'd actually been suffering from health issues for 2 years at that stage. So we're talking daily chronic headaches. They're very debilitating. I probably wasn't really honest about who I was because a bit like Sian, while she was lost, I was probably depressed and unwell. And at that stage, I was working with doctors and naturopaths and stuff to try to work out what was going on. And we identified that my home environment and the toxicity in that home environment was probably playing a key role. So at that time, I was going through a journey of eradicating plastics and anything else quite toxic and harmful to really reduce the volatile organic compounds in my home. So that we're talking like changing mattresses and pillows and cookware and the things that I stored my food in. So everything. But one area that was really difficult was cleaning products. So packaged in plastic, full of nasties. I would use products that had organic in the name for my headache to escalate to a migraine. And I would contact these companies and say, what's going on? Do other people complain about migraines? And they just assured me, no, it's fine. There's nothing wrong here, nothing to see, which is a real challenge in this category because it is really quite unregulated. You don't even have to disclose the ingredients that are used in the products. At the same time, we had, if you think back to that period, that was the year that we had really extreme bushfires across Australia and actually started on the Sunshine Coast up in Coolum Beach. So I was quite despondent, having always been a greenie, really concerned about the climate, about the early onset of the fires. And I came across Just Add Water cleaning products at the time. So it seemed like a genius concept, as you mentioned, Kim, in the intro, cleaning products are 97% plus water, packaged in single-use plastic. So we use it once, throw it away. This idea that you could just get the actives in a tablet, bar, powder form and reuse a bottle over and over again. And the idea that maybe I could find something that had ingredients that I could use just seemed like a potential huge lifesaver for me. But as I started to look into what was available, there was nothing in Australia. I did import some solutions from the US, but again, the packaging was not suitable for my health and I didn't feel that it was actually durable. And the ingredients still had artificial fragrances and sulfates and things that I just couldn't touch. So I guess I thought at that stage, well, this idea just didn't leave me. And that's probably something that I'd say to your audience. You probably have a million ideas. I do all the time. Like I've got many that I'd like to work on now with Sian, actually. She knows I'm always semi-pitching them to her. But there will be an idea every now and then that will not leave you. You'll think about it endlessly and you'll realize that you're solving a real pain point. And the fact it was a personal one for me, I think was really helpful. But at the same time, I also knew that I could build a business and a brand around this product that was much more than a product. It was really going to be a movement. It was really going to be purposeful and ethics-based. And so I had the idea and the product with my passion, and they kind of combined in addition to the fact that obviously I have experience managing big, complex projects. I just had this feeling like, all right, if anyone can do this, it's going to be me. And now's the time. And we're going to have to move really fast because I cannot believe that this is not here in Australia.
Wow. What were your first few steps at that stage? I mean, I say, wow, I don't even want to move on from that because I actually need a minute. That is just unbelievable to take that journey. And you're absolutely right. There are some ideas that they're kind of like earworms, aren't they? They just get in there and you just can't get rid of them. And ideas come to you about it, the most random of experiences. Everything just kind of seems there ready to go. So yes, I hear you on that because you just know when those right ideas are coming around for you. What were your first few steps in making it real?
Yeah, like I solve any problem or approach any project. It's like about collecting lots of data, right? I had basically, I don't know, probably a million questions, still do, that have to be answered. And so I just write a list. So the first one was, how do I make this? Like, I don't have a chemistry background. I almost failed chemistry in school. And so I thought, all right, who in my network could help me? And I thought, I know someone who's a compound pharmacist. I have a feeling they're not the right chemist, right? Because we see pharmacists as chemists. But I'm just going to give them a call. So I was just not afraid to call people I knew and ask really silly questions. I made a decision that I was going to do this. I would call them and say, I'm going to make this. I need your help. I think you can help me answer these questions. And then we would just have a robust conversation about that. Turns out, of course, a compound pharmacist wasn't the right one, but that was a really helpful conversation because, I learned I need a formulation chemist. I learned that I should have a really good understanding of the manufacturing process, because it's all well and good to formulate something, but if you don't have a manufacturing process that exists to make it, then you've got a problem. I didn't listen to that advice at all, because actually in the end our chemist made something where there was no manufacturing solution here in Australia for it. So that was a new problem. So that was one question. The other really big one, and I touched upon it before, was that I wanted to build a brand, not just a product, like a real brand that people really loved, that created a movement. And while I'm really confident in my abilities in the, I guess, general business and bringing people together and solving problems, the marketing branding piece, I knew that I wasn't the right person for that. And so I started to think, who in my network is the right people? And so I contacted Renil, who's actually our head of customer insights. He has a marketing background, but very specific in customer insights. He said he wasn't the right person, but he joined in our journey as head of customer insights, and he's a shareholder. The next person I contacted was a woman by the name of Sasha Lincoln. So she's on the Sunshine Coast and really awesome businesswoman, has a couple of businesses, really great with strategic marketing and tech and building businesses. And while keen and also a shareholder now, she just didn't have the time. So I would just say to her, well, who else do you know? This is the type of person that I want. So I put it out into the universe. I'd be like, this is what they look like. This is what they do. This is kind of the vibe that they bring to it. Do you have any ideas? And, thankfully, she actually, after a couple of days, was like, actually, I have the perfect person. And that's when she brought up Sian. She shared her socials with me, and I looked at Sian's socials. So she had already built her own really big, well, in my mind, big 7,000. Like, my own Instagram is private. I have 100 followers, but Sian had built a community of 7,000 people. I just really liked her own personal brand. Again, fun, down to earth, really concerned with environmental issues, extremely authentic. And her aesthetic was really nice. And I just had this feeling like, yes, that's it. That's what I want. I'd like to package Sian up into this business that I'm going to build. That was the next really big issue. And then from there, basically just take the same approach to solving any problems, which is, what's the problem? What do I need to solve for? Who in my community can help? And then just get on with it.
How was that conversation for you, Sian, when Amy first reached out to you?
It just kind of felt like perfect timing. It was a bit surreal. I think I was looking back on it, and the night before I did a post on Instagram where I was saying, like, I just feel like I'm ready for the next thing. I'm feeling really inspired, but I don't know why. Some kind of, long, deep caption to some probably irrelevant photo. But when I was looking back at it, I was like, this is so surreal. That was like the day before Amy and I met. So Sasha organized for us all to meet at a cafe, and I went in really having no idea what to expect. And then when Amy told me about this idea, I just thought, obviously, I was passionate about the environment. I had recently moved into a new home on the sunny coast and had just literally gone to the supermarket and stood there being like, what on earth am I going to buy here? And so when she told me about it, I was like, oh, cool. Okay. Couldn't foresee where it was going to go, what was going to happen. I just said, yeah, well, I'm interested. It sounds great. And like most things, when I start working on them, I get really into it. And it just kind of rolled on from there. But it was just a great idea. And I said, sure, I'd love to be involved and see where it goes. And I did not expect it would end up here, but I'm so happy it did.
Oh, such a lesson there in trust. I guess, Amy, you talk about being quite practical in the approach, going with the list and drawing on that. But there's such an exercise of trust in there that it's not a thing yet. It's not real yet. I can't show you a position description or anything like that. But here's something I want to do, and I'm going to attract the right people in. And the right people are going to be convinced to join me on this journey. There's just so much in there already to learn. How did you approach testing the market for this? So getting that confidence that what you could sell was what was needed.
Yeah, our approach to that was extremely methodical, like most things in Pleasant State, I'd say, in that really leveraged my, I guess, learnings and education from my MBA and entrepreneurial studies to look at product market fit, testing like hypotheses, leveraging people and insights to understand, are we solving for a real problem? I mentioned Brynil before, who's our head of customer insight. So at that stage, he wasn't overly involved, but I went to him and I said, all right, before we even do anything, before we invest in this product, we need to do a market research exercise. This is kind of our budget. What can you do? And so he created, I guess, a market research piece of work, which involved us speaking to 8 independent Australians on 2 occasions. The first interview, which was over Zoom at this time, right? Because we literally kicked this off as we went into lockdown. So he did this via Zoom, and it was a really like deep interview questions into what their lives looked like right now and how they think that would change as a result of how the world was changing, what they cared about when it came to environmental matters, what they had already changed. And then it started to move more into, well, what did their cleaning behaviors look like? And had they ever considered environmental or health factors in their cleaning? We got them to pull out cleaning products that they had under their sink, and Renelle had a really good discussion with them around that. And then he introduced them to the concept. And so off the back of that, we already had really great insight into the fact that we were solving for a real problem, that these people that we thought would be attracted to it were really interested. And we knew things like that the world was changing, and this appetite for purchasing cleaning products online was definitely a thing. I loved these interviews because we got to record them and they knew that was the case. And so I'd sit there with my popcorn every night, like watching these recordings, just like fascinated because I'm a geek.
I love that.
But it was so good. And then so off the back of that, we were actually working with a branding agency at the same time. So I know lots of people will say to you, don't invest too much in the branding piece up front, like get it to market and do this. But for us, we had a really clear idea that we were building a brand. And so we made sure that we invested heavily in that. But back to your point, we also attracted a branding agency that was committed to our mission. And so we were really fortunate that we were able to negotiate a really generous fee with them. And so this is something that I would also say to anyone listening is you've got to sell that vision and your purpose and get people to buy into you in that regard, because that's how we've found partners and people who really are champions for us. So while we were working with that branding agency, Sian and I gave them lots of information about what we saw and the kind of brand that we wanted to build, but we were also feeding in the market research piece as well. And so on that basis, they were able to develop concepts like the name, what the bottles look like, color concepts. Sian developed all of our communication pillars. We had an idea about which charities we wanted to support. And so in the second round of interviews, Renelle took all of that information back to those same 8 Australians and said, okay, what do you think about the name? Which bottles do you like? What about the colors? What do you think about these communication pillars? Which charity would you prefer? And then at the end, we asked a really interesting question. This was my favorite bit of the entire research, which was, if Pleasant State were a person, how would you describe them? And the range of answers we got was so fascinating. Like, say it was a 30-year-old woman. The Pleasant State was probably a mid-30-year-old woman, very successful, really nice, never says anything bad about anyone, really beautifully dressed. And then the 50-year-old man would say, if Pleasant State was a person, it would be like a mid-50-year-old man, very successful and charming, dressed in a suit and polished shoes, liked by everyone. Like, again, I'm with my popcorn thinking, what? Like, Pleasant State isn't a man dressed in a suit. Like, what world is he in? So anyway, Renelle, with obviously his psych and customer insights background, when he presented that information, he said what was happening is people were describing their aspirational self. We had built a brand that, wasn't even in market, with no products, nothing, that if people could be their best version, that was what Pleasant State was. And that was gold. We just knew we were onto something huge and that we were just going to knuckle down and go really hard after this opportunity. And we used all of those insights to really bed down our branding and go hard to get into market.
Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. I would have been right there with you with the popcorn and just seeing what people say and what comes in there. That just sounds like such an enjoyable process. You touched a little bit there on financing, and the big visions often come with those big dollar values for the partners you want to attract, the people you want to work with. How did you manage that in terms of investment into the business? How did that work for you? How did that look?
So prior to starting Pleasant State, I had another business. I'd sold in a software solution into one of the big four accounting firms. And so I had quite a bit of cash. I guess there was profit in that business. And so we were just fortunate that we could spin that off into the holding company. And so we used a lot of that to initially fund Pleasant State. Our shareholders all invested a bit of money into Pleasant State to support that. And so that was really the initial capital that we needed to do the market research, to build the brand, and to fund the marketing campaign that led up to our crowdfunding campaign. We knew, though, that money would run out fairly quickly because we did invest quite heavily in those early stages. But to us, that was a really important investment because there was no way we were going to go and manufacture 20,000 glass bottles without building this brand and testing the market. And the crowdfunding was the next stage. So we did a pre-order crowdfunding campaign, which, Sian is definitely placed to talk about all of the details around that because that's in her area, noting obviously we're all involved, but she's the mastermind behind it. The pre-order crowdfunding was really important. That to us was another way to test that we had product market fit and that people were going to pay for our product. So we knew from our market research what their willingness to pay was. Now we were saying, well, come on, pay for this product. And so by bringing that cash flow forward, that was enough to at least put down some of the money to actually pay for the bottles. Having said that, again, the broker that we used, I went in there and I pitched our mission and our vision. So we're looking for a partner. And as a result of that, because they really bought into what we were doing, we were able to negotiate really generous supplier terms with them. So, we're constantly trying to just delay when we pay for our inventory. It comes down to a really important, tight cash flow management. So crowdfunding played a role. And then, we've just continued to do things like pre-orders, revenue financing, loans from family and friends. And then our sales have continued to fund us. So we're bootstrapped and crowdfunded to this point.
That is so cool. I'm going to guess that sort of interaction with a community to say, hey, this is what we're doing. Get us up, get us going, get around it if it's something that you value, may have played a part in the community building aspect of things and how you've created, I guess, more advocates for your brand that start to do some of that marketing work for you. Was that the intent leading into it, or was that a side benefit? I mean, I just want to know so much more about this experience of the crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, I think like Amy said, we wanted to test the market. We wanted to know that people actually wanted this product and they were connecting with the product, but also we were testing the brand we'd built too. But one of the best things about a crowdfunding campaign is that it means that by the time you launch and you're shipping your products, you already had, in our case, we had 1,500 customers, and not just 1,500 people that had ordered the product, seen it late at night while online shopping and just, ordered it straight away. These are people that had heard our story, that were really supportive of us, passionate about us, and happy to put money into us before we had even really confirmed or shown them the final product. So I think it's a huge campaign. It's a lot of work. And I think we were surprised at how hard it was once we started running it. But the connections you get with those customers are gold. And then you can carry them through the rest of the business. We still touch on that story. We still have customers who backed us in the crowdfunding reaching out to us today. For example, when we won that award that was presented by Prime Minister Albanese in Ardern, we had people be like, I remember when I backed you and I, brought you a pre-order, that type of thing. And we get those messages a lot, that people that have followed along on the journey. And I think that's really special to have that. And I think you can do it as well, though, with a crowdfunding is a great way to do it. But just now with all the kind of social avenues that we have, you can build that, and we continue to build that too. So we can still do polls or ask people questions, or when we run pre-order campaigns now, it's a similar thing. For example, last year we launched our hand and dishwash. And it was the same thing. We have a new product idea that will help us reduce plastic and toxins. We're a bootstrap startup. Can you help us get there? And we had over another 1,500 pre-orders. So yes, it's a good journey, and it's a good way to keep building that excitement and community around you.
That's incredible. Did you get that message out there in the first instance by building your socials? I mean, how did that all play out?
If you look back at it now, it's so funny. So we started off just us. We didn't have a graphic designer like we do now. So it was me then putting a lot of content together that I thought was questionable, but it was the best we could do. So we started with socials, basically. So we launched on our Instagram, Facebook channels. It started by really pushing it to people in our community. So our friends, family. I had also, like Amy mentioned, built a bit of an audience on Instagram, which helped with that initial start too. So we had a few people. And then from there, we started doing ads as well. So Facebook ads were really crucial for us early on. So we had lead generation through there, building excitement for when it launched. We had a target. I don't remember what the number was, but we basically looking at other campaigns that we'd seen and figuring out the ratio of people that had signed up to back the campaign versus had backed it. We had a lead gen target. So we need this many people on our email database to launch. And so that was what we were working towards, just trying to get as many people on our database as we could. By the time we got there, we hadn't hit the target we wanted. And I said, in hindsight, I would have just extended and gone again and said, let's keep building that list. But we said, let's go, we'll hit go anyway. And what that meant was the first couple of days were huge. I think we were shocked. So we had, I think it was around 20, 30,000 in pre-orders just in the first couple of days. But then that dropped off a little bit. So the database wasn't as big as we had hoped then. Well, that was fine. It just meant that we had to keep hustling throughout. So we just made it a little bit harder on ourselves. But it was definitely socials and ads that were driving database leads. And then throughout the campaign, just a lot of, I think there were videos where I was filming, holding up signs, being like, can you help us? We made a really entertaining crowdfunding video, but it was just kind of like educating people on the problem, pushing that story, and just getting support from as many people as we could.
I can't remember where I heard this from, but it's something that's been playing in my mind a lot lately, that if you don't cringe about the first few things you put out for your business, you're just doing it wrong, because you look back on where you start and think about where you were then and where you are now. You don't get to where you are now without being a little bit cringe in the first instance. So, if anybody is listening thinking, oh God, we all cringe at our first things, and I go back and listen to my first episode, I'm like, please let me burn this. Just how do I get rid of this? So I can relate to that. Canva just becomes your best friend, and you just do whatever you can do with your mobile phone, and maybe a gimbal for your selfies. But interestingly, it leads me perfectly to my next question. Is you both show up as faces of the brand. So through your marketing, your content, I see you and your personalities and your faces all through the contents. What has that benefited you, and what challenges have come from it?
That's a really deliberate strategy, because it's quite clear people buy into people. We wanted to build a real relationship with our community and show the people behind the brand so that they would support us as individuals. For me, being a really private person, that was really difficult. And I knew that though it was necessary and really imperative to build this brand that I knew was possible, that people would actually love. It's not necessarily that they love us, but they love what they're part of, and people really drive that. Yeah, so for me, there was the stress of, are we going to have trolls? What are they going to say about me? What are they going to do? And I just remember those first few weeks, anytime we'd get a Facebook message, just being terrified, what are they going to say? I don't take criticism particularly well. I'm a real perfectionist. And so just receiving feedback, particularly if it's about us or our brand, I was really afraid of that. What's really surprising is that just didn't happen. And I'm really gobsmacked. But I think it is because we're really positive and deliberately, I think, Sian in particular is really likable. And maybe I am too. But I think by being really optimistic and hopeful, if we did get any negativity, if we just responded with kindness, it would go away really instantly. So I think it's really hard to argue against people who are kind and optimistic. And we're never preachy. We recognize that people care about different issues, or you can't be completely single-use plastic free. You can't be completely toxin free. The products available don't really allow that, or people can't necessarily afford all those products. And so we've never preached and made people feel bad about their choices. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was just putting myself out there despite being a private person, and learning that it's not necessarily criticism, it's just feedback, and just really open to that and using that information to evolve. And now, honestly, when we get feedback, it's just oh, okay, water off a duck's back. So it's really amazing how much you develop bit by bit. I guess feedback and stuff comes in.
Yeah, Amy has come a long way. Like, you think about those early videos, like Amy said earlier, that was part of the reason she wanted to work with me and brought me on board, is because I had those qualities already. I was always going to be really comfortable in front of the camera. I wouldn't build a brand that I wasn't involved with. It's just how I work. It's my communication style as well. And so for me, it's what I love doing, and I love engaging with people in that way. And I think that comes through the content as well, because it's fun and I'm absolutely loving it. But also it means that you create something that really resonates with you, right? So this pleasant state, obviously we have a brand and it's not exactly Amy and I, but there's a lot of us in this brand. And so we're really passionate about it and connected to it. I think the struggle with me, or something I found a little bit difficult throughout, which I've been learning, is still having your own identity. That makes sense. So when I started before Pleasant State, I had my own account where I was traveling a lot and talking about a lot of things. And then all of a sudden I was working on Pleasant State and putting so much of my energy into that I think about, it was, a year in, I was like, oh, like, who am I? Like, I'm Pleasant State. And that was my persona. And that's all I get in bed, and all my ideas are around how can I communicate Pleasant State and how can I share the Pleasant State message with more people. And so I think that's something I struggled with, as someone that likes being kind of front facing and talking to lots of people. How could I still have my sense of self? And I think that's just about finding balance, and also knowing that it's okay to have your own personality in a brand. So I think that's something that's really important when I'm talking to customers. I don't have to be Pleasant State. I can be Sian. That's part of Pleasant State. And so just reminding yourself of that all the time is important, because people actually want to connect with a person that's part of a brand, not someone that's trying to be a brand. It could be a little bit less authentic. So yeah, it's been an interesting learning, that one. I never I couldn't have predicted that would happen, but it's fascinating.
That's so interesting, thinking about it from that perspective. You're, running, just in a practical sense, running an Instagram page for Pleasant State and showing up there on the visuals and putting yourself in there. And then you've still got your page, your communications that you need to have back to that audience. And, I understand this. I seem to have far too many profiles on my Instagram, but you cross over between the two a little bit, but then you sort of go, okay, but what are my content pillars for Sian? Like, what do I share? What do I share now? It feels like it's not as easy to be able to show up there when you're in that sort of, business mind. But so many of us experience that when you do put yourself into a brand that's meant to live beyond you for other people, but is you at the same time. It's quite comforting to hear that that's an experience that others have had. What is the hardest thing for you guys about scaling up?
Oh, so many things. Just for us, cash is the biggest issue, mainly because being a product business that purchases glass bottles at high order quantities, we have quite a demand, right, in terms of cash invested into inventory. And so that has definitely been limiting. While we were able to get out of the gates really quickly because we were kind of cash flush, could build a brand, get out there, got some money from crowdfunding, got our first bottles up. But as time has gone on, because we sit on a bit of inventory, always finding that cash to continue to grow is somewhat challenging. I'd also say the cost of acquisition for customers in a direct-to-consumer space has really changed as a result of the iOS changes. So just navigating that and learning how to play a game the system continues to present challenges for us. And then the third would be, we get so many opportunities that come to us. There's so many directions that we could take that can actually be paralyzing at times. So it's really important that we're always really clear on where we want to go and what our strategy is, so that we say yes to the right opportunities and say, no, thank you, not the right time, to those that are not right for us.
Sian, I'd love to know what your favourite campaign has been to date for Pleasant State and why.
It was quite recent, actually. We recently collaborated with Mirvac. And so Mirvac is a developer based in Melbourne, or all over Australia, really. But they had in Altona North in Melbourne, it was called The Fabric. And basically it's a development there in Altona North with a bunch of sustainable homes. And as part of that, they came to us saying they wanted to fit out one of their display homes with a range of Australian sustainable brands. And so basically they had this really cool concept, came to us and I was like, wow, amazing that they're chatting to us about this. They're a huge brand, but they said, all right, we want to fit out this home with Australia's best sustainable brands. Can you recommend any? And so what that meant was we've built Pleasant State and been inspired by so many other amazing brands over the last couple of years. And so, of course, I had a list ready. We've all had a list ready to go. I was like, yes, let's go, and just sent them through our list, introduced them to those brands. And then all of a sudden we had this collaboration in this beautiful home in Melbourne that featured all our favorite sustainable brands. So, and because we were involved so early on in that campaign, we really got to work with them quite closely and shape that too, which was great. So we got a lot out of it and they got a lot out of it. I went down there to Melbourne and they interviewed me for that collaboration as well, which was an awesome experience. And then they hosted an event to launch it where I was part of the panel. And I remember one of the panelists next to me, he was like the head designer for Koala mattresses. And I'm on a panel sitting next to some amazing people. And I was just like, it was just a bit of a wow moment and really cool opportunity for all these brands that are working towards the same common goal, to have all ethical brands wanting to make an impact, but just showing a really interactive campaign that just shows how easy it is and how far we've come. Because I think, one of the key messages that came out of that campaign was that you can have a really beautiful home and life can be easy while living sustainably, where all of these brands now are making it easier than ever. You don't have to go make something yourself and live off grid, that type of thing. So yeah, it was just a really nice campaign where everything came together and we really got to show our brand.
Oh, that sounds like, a really good time. It sounds like a cool experience as well to sit there on that panel and kind of almost macro out of where you've been and what's been happening for you to see where that's going. There is so much research out there. If you're not convinced already about the benefits of being a social impacts-led company, there's so much research out there in terms of the commercial return that's available for those businesses focusing on this area as well. The time has just never been more right for more socially led companies to just hit the tracks and do the right thing for the planet and make something awesome. So I'm so inspired by hearing your story. Where do you want to see this grow to? What's the big dream? What's the end goal?
Yeah, when we started Pleasant State, it was very much we were focused on the fact we were the first Australian brand to come out with Just Add Water, single-use plastic-free and toxic-free cleaning solutions. And we got to market really quickly because we knew there were competitors would enter, but the market's really changed. And now where we see our brand is that we create ethical products that make home care a form of self-care. And so we're really trying to change this relationship with cleaning and make it a really mindful one and one that is focused on self-care while creating a really beautiful brand that's very ethical. And so in the next 3 years, we see Pleasant State really owning that space, being that preferred choice for home care products as a form of self-care. We'd be really excited to see Pleasant State positioned in beauty retailers, which is very, very different. Again, really trying to disrupt the market. So that's a goal for us. Mecca would be ideal. We see ourselves going global in the next sort of 2 years, and we're very lucky to have been accepted into a really exciting program that supports, ambitious female founders that have high growth opportunities to go global. And so in the coming months, Sean and I will be working very hard on building out that global strategy. So yeah, our goal is to have Pleasant State available across the globe so that we can help people live happier and healthier lives.
Wow, what an incredible goal. Just as a side note, how do you manage your days, both of you, with so much exciting potential, but so much to do in the roles, so much motivating you? I mean, Sian, you touched on it before about regaining your own identity and just making sure not to get too lost. It's kind of fun to get lost in the right ideas and the right businesses, but how are you both balancing how much you need to give to this to see it to grow?
It's not easy, and I think we're constantly learning as well. Particularly in the second half of last year, we got really focused on scaling and growth and doing it rapidly. And then we kind of came to this moment just towards the end of the year where we were like, this isn't aligning with us. We're exhausted. We're burnt out. How do we make this more fun? And what do we need to do to make this whole experience more fun? Because I think you're constantly realizing that there's no golden ticket in this experience. Like you'll constantly have opportunities pop up and you're like, oh, this is it. We're going to grow. Like, let's go. And then they often don't work out as you think, or they do in just a different way. And this journey is a long and amazingly rewarding, but it's a long journey and you've got to put the effort in. And so I think once we kind of realized that, we said, all right, let's do this sustainably so we can sustain this and enjoy it. And so this year we've been really clear with our boundaries and really clear with our time, and making sure that, you know, we're not just working till 7 p.m. just because, like, we go home, balance it with our lives, and also separate our times. Like, we're going to work on this morning and then move into something in the afternoon. And that just means you're not sitting here like being distracted by every new opportunity or every email that comes your way as well. And I'm learning it. Definitely haven't nailed it, particularly when you're working in digital, and I'll have influencers and that'll go live and I'll be like, oh, how did that go? And this, and numbers coming to you constantly. So it is quite difficult. And I think we're learning, but a big shift for us this year has been making it sustainable growth and having fun.
It's brilliant advice. You've got to make it sustainable for yourself. I mean, it just aligns so beautifully to what you're doing overall as well. You can't scale up without the people behind it. So that makes a lot of sense. My final question for you both today, you have such incredible foundations already with this brand. Like I said to you, I can't remember exactly how I found your business, but what I remember about the experience of interacting with you when I reached out to say, I would love to know more about your brand. I would love to interview you. I got an auto reply saying that my message had been received and it was going to be picked up by someone soon. The tone of that was just so glorious. And I felt like I had met a friend on there. I was like, oh, even though I knew it was an auto reply, I felt like you just replied to me personally. So I've just been enamored with your business from, you know, that interaction, but, you know, well before that as well. But to see you keep growing, you know, you've shared so much today about your story. How can the listener and I support you on this journey? What can we do for you?
The first one would definitely be to do yourself a favor and buy Pleasant State products. You'll be happy. They're beautiful. They smell amazing, but they actually work. So you can go to pleasantstate.com to do that. If you sign up to our email, you'll get a discount. But what's even more exciting is, I guess, to honor our commitment to being a business that's customer, employee, supplier owned. We're actually about to embark upon an equity crowdfunding raise. So that's really different to our last crowdfunding, which is a pre-order. This time around, we're giving Australians the opportunity to actually own a part of Pleasant State by investing some money in us to support us with those growth ambitions, which will help us go global, help us position ourselves as the preferred home care as a form of self-care product. Yeah, and again, just really demonstrating that there's a different way to do business, one that's really ethical and one that's really focused on its community. So we're super excited. Do you have anything to add, Sian?
It's a really exciting time. So our customers have been so integral to our journey to date. And so I think having a part of that community that really backs us as part of Pleasant State is really exciting. And so we're excited for this campaign, for this crowdfund. And then I'm even more excited for what that means for the next year and years after that for Pleasant State.
Amazing. I'm going to make sure I've got the link to your website. Will you release that detail on there through your website?
Yes, and I think that the best thing to do would be, if you're interested, sign up to our emails, but also there will be definitely details about the campaign on our actual website. It'll also be available on Virtual. So Virtual is the platform that we're going through. So if you Google Pleasant State Virtual, pretty sure it'll easily come up.
We'll be talking about it. It's going to be everywhere.
And I can confirm the emails that come through are really quite a good time. I always read them. They're really fun. There's always something exciting happening in there. So I'll make sure to have the links to your website, your socials, all of those things there so that the listener can go get around you and continue to support you on this growth trajectory that you're on. Guys, thank you so much for having a chat with me today. It's just been such an enjoyable experience hearing about your business building, your ideas, how you've grown it. I feel inspired. So I know that the listener is going to feel inspired too. And I just cannot wait to watch you on this journey and to grow. Thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you so much. Loved it.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid. See you there.